anybody did not have a chance to introduce themselves while signing up, if you would please in the chat, introduce with your name, your learner's name, age, species, breed, any relevant info like that. And how's your journey been going so far? There's no right or wrong answer. If you haven't started yet, great. We will make sure you feel confident starting after today. If you're a bit more advanced, all right, we'll figure out where to get you the help that you need as well as answer questions that you have so far. So while you all are introducing yourselves, I don't know if you can hear some requests happening in the background. My cat, Katie, has woken up from her nap as soon as I start teaching each time these days. So she's requesting wet food. So I'm going to model saying yes to her and following through with her wet food presses. And now Katie's a little bit unique in that she is mostly blind. She has both of her eyes, but there's a lot of scarring. So I want to bring things to her whenever possible. So she sees, oh, okay, good girl, yeah, that the buttons are getting her what she wants. So she was pressing wet food I brought temporarily to her. If I didn't have resource guarding dogs, I would go ahead and just put it on the floor right there. But I do have resource guarding dogs. So wet food, yes. I'm going to press the button. I'm going to talk to her and I'm going to put her in her little safe feeding station away from the dogs where normally you would want to eat Missy. Often she's been requesting pumpkin lately. So I can preemptively pull the container of pumpkin out for her. Hi, Katie Cat. We'll see. We might get more. Katie, you have your wet food and pumpkin. We'll see if she requests more. So I have Katie, who is a visually impaired 1-year-old cat, and then Bernie, who just hopped down in the background. He has one eye and is also about a year old now and also uses the buttons. So I'm excited to dive in with your crew. Let's see, let me share my screen for you all now that I don't have pressing happening in the background. Though we'll see, we might get more demoing. They tend to be very chatty while I am teaching. They know that I will follow through. I'm very inclined to say yes while I'm teaching so that we can be demoing these behaviors for you all. But let's see, we've got lots of intros coming through. Irma, always great to have you. We have Calvin here from FluentPet as well today. Welcome and thank you guys. Anastasia, welcome to you and your tortie cat, Misha. 2 buttons and looking to add a third. Fantastic. Love it. Adam, welcome to you and Runt, 9 months old, just starting to use her buttons, using them for the first time 2 days ago. Fantastic. That is awesome. Oh, I can't wait to hear more as we dive in here. Rachel, welcome to you and your 2 dogs, 6-year-old golden retriever Simba and 6-year-old corgi Bjorn. 4 cats, awesome, 2 domestic short hair, and let's see, my chat jumped around, sorry, and 2 Norwegian forest cats. Oh, also fun. We'll also probably use the buttons. A lot of the Norwegian forest cats that have been introduced to them seem to take to the buttons, though they're all unique and individuals. And what's fascinating about groups of cats and multi-learner households, sometimes there's a spokes cat or an advocate who likes to press for everyone. And then sometimes, they all like to press. I've got 4 pressers out of my 4 learners, though 3 use the buttons more than others. And Katie is telling me all done because she wants my attention. So I'm, hi, Katie Cat, going to offer her some attention here while you all continue to introduce yourselves. And Judith, welcome to you and Momo, 5 years old, just got some buttons last week. Hasn't gotten the hang of them yet, which makes sense, only being a week in, so that you're still on track. Don't worry about that. Although today at dinner, he started whining and nudging me to go press the button for him. That is fantastic. I love that you're seeing that progress already too. And observing different types of progress. Other examples that we'll talk about more as we go through today could be just them staring at a button, laser focused, or staring at the button and back at us. Patting near the buttons, of course. Napping on or near the board is another early sign of progress that we love to see. So thank you for sharing. Kate, welcome to you and your 3 dogs. Now what? Soon what, Bernie? um, so yes, Kate, welcome to you, your two pitties, and your Frenchie, all rescues, waiting on buttons to arrive, but excited to get started. Nice. And Barbara, welcome to you, and more Frenchies. I love that we've got multiple Frenchies rep today, in addition to lots of other varieties. Started with buttons when our oldest was a puppy, wasn't super interested, stopped for a while, but I think this way of communicating will be great for our youngest. Nice. And you might be surprised to find that if, when your youngest starts using buttons more, that might inspire your oldest. And so continue modeling for everyone. We'll share more about this, but I love for buttons to equal abundance. So if one presses, everybody gets the opportunity in the household to be a part of things. My goodness, y'all. Speaking of, as both of y'all are competing for my attention right now. And worst case, if they are too chatty, I can always move locations. So you can use that to your advantage as well. Since I'm sitting close to the board, they're like, oh boy, time to press. It's nice and convenient, close to me to get my attention. So hanging out near the board, making it the place to be for you and your learners, or bringing it with you while it's small. If you work upstairs, for example, part of the day, bring your board up with you, and then when you go downstairs for the evening, you can bring it with as well, or have duplicate boards. Totally up to you. And again, we can dive more into all of this. But before we do dive in, a little bit of housekeeping. So we have our wonderful our community coordinator, Irma, here today, who's keeping an eye out for any technical issues you might have. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help. This is being recorded, and you'll receive a follow-up email as well from Irma with a link to the recording and the transcript today. So if you need to, take care of your learner, get distracted by work, whatever, no problem. And you're also welcome to come back to a boot camp. We love to have you, anybody else in your household, so we can dive into all that and resources. I can show you where to find that. All right, and so a bit more on our agenda here. So we have our introductions that we're doing now, and we'll chat through the keys to button teaching, modeling first words, and target training. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout. In the chat is easiest for me to keep track of, and then we can talk about it in the most relevant part and kind of combine questions that go together. And then I'll share additional resources, including mentorship calls that go into more depth about specific topics, and where you can take future boot camps, fun stuff like that. And then we'll have time for more Q&A. So if you'd rather talk through the questions that you have, we've got time for that at the end too, or any follow-ups that come up as we're going through today. And a little bit more about me, since you all have been introducing yourselves. I know I introduced my cats so far, but I'm Morgan Krug. I'm a certified dog behavior consultant. I've been working professionally with animals for going on 18 years now. And while I'm best known for teaching my blind cat Jasper to use the buttons, who's pictured here, I've had multiple successful dog learners and now my visually impaired kittens as well. So I'm excited to help you all with your learners and their unique and individual needs. And as we're going through and talking about things today, know that these are general best practices that we've developed over the last 4.5 years with, experience and research, but that doesn't mean they're the only ways to do things. And I'm not here to tell you that you're doing anything wrong. You know your learners and your household best. So if at any point I say something and you're like, nah, it's not going to work for us, no problem. Let's figure out what will work instead. There is definitely nuance with all of this as well. All right. So, hi, Katie Cat. Let me get her some kibble, since that's what she's requesting here and wants so much. And there's a close-up of Birdie in case anybody was wondering. So we'll go more in depth with this, but whenever possible, again, say yes to their press, particularly when they're learning. We want to follow up quickly. And again, in Katie's case, with her being visually impaired, I like to bring things to her, and then I'm really reinforcing that the board is where the action is happening. She's like, oh, heck yeah. And again, if I didn't have resource guarding dogs, I would just go ahead and do a little kibble scatter for her right there, or bring her the food to the board. But since I do have resource guarding dogs, we've got, hi, Katie, a puzzle set up. I'll stop sharing real quick so that anybody watching elsewhere can see here too. So we've got a puzzle set up on top of another elevated feeding station that the dogs can't get to. So that way it takes Katie a little bit longer, and Bernie as well. You can see he's like, oh, heck yeah, kibble. Hi, Bernie. And they will share a puzzle, but so that he doesn't feel left out, again, I want this to equal abundance. There you go, buddy. Since the dog is napping, I can get away with a few for him there on the floor. Reshare. Hopefully that's helpful. And so the idea is I'm being, let's just say, interrupted, what it is, by my learner's presses. It's not always convenient to say yes, but whenever possible, following through, showing them that the button has a consistent outcome. And I told her yes with a puzzle that's going to take her a little bit longer to work through. So that'll hopefully buy me more time without interruptions. But thinking about things like that, that you can say yes, that isn't necessarily just like, yes, here's a cookie. Yes, here's a cookie. That would get old for a lot of us, right? All of those repetitions. So again, we'll dive more into this in a moment. So a bit more about us and about FluentPet here. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger were using buttons previously with their learners, FluentPet is the original button teaching system. And our mission is to figure out how to teach dogs, cats, and the other animals we share this planet with how to talk, or an approximation of it. And we believe that pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. So that is where you all come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learners. And the more of us who are able to progress, the faster we can figure out just how far all this can go. And in case you're wondering, how far can all this go? We think this video really helps paint a picture of what's possible. And you'll probably recognize Alexis and Bunny.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect.
Do you need to get outside?
I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw. And then she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
And it's not just Bunny who can do these amazing things. I mentioned my blind cat, Jasper. She was able to request medication multiple times for her eye after having an eye procedure with eyes and help, or some combination of that. And it's not all medical related. There's lots of fun examples too. One of my favorite early ones was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who would repeatedly combine water and bone. Took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes, and she was able to get an ice cube button to advocate for herself in that way. So it really is amazing how creative they can be, even with a limited vocabulary. All right, so how do we begin for those of you who are just getting started? Our first step is modeling, which we've been talking about and demoing some with Miss Katie and her button presses. And before you have your buttons set up, you can be practicing this verbally. Talk to your learners all the time. Try to be specific with your language. Keep track of, what you're consistent around, what language other members of your household are using, and try to be as consistent as you can. None of us are robots, though. Perfection is not the goal. Just get an idea of maybe what concepts you can narrow down as potentially good starting buttons. So since modeling is how we teach our learners what these concepts mean, early on, picking buttons that are easy for you to say yes to their presses tends to help capture their excitement, their enthusiasm around the board, and teach them that this is an amazing tool that they now have available to them. So once you're ready to set the buttons up, 3 simple steps. Again, you're talking to them all throughout, but once you have the physical buttons, first press that button. Then step 2, follow through. Show them the meaning of the word by making it happen. So again, this is where having it be something that's easy for you to say yes to, easy to follow through with, sets you up for success and them up for success more. And then step 3 is repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. It's a lot of repetition, especially early on while we're helping them understand, again, that the buttons have a consistent outcome each and every time they're pressed. So what does this actually look like in practice? I have a video for you with Kelly and her learner Delmer, and this is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household. So you'll see, again, just how much repetition she's doing.
Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Pet. puzzle, outside, outside, pets, puzzle, puzzle,
Yes.
Well done.
Puzzle. More puzzle?
puzzle,
That beautiful
puzzle,
accidental press
outside,
there.
outside, outside, puzzle, outside, puzzle, outside, outside, outside,
So again, lots of repetition there. And again, that was all throughout the day. So if you are not home throughout the day, that's no problem. Just thinking about modeling, following through whenever you are around the board. And if you don't have the capacity, you're, on Zoom calls all day with your boss, you can't be breaking away. You've got to be on camera, for example. Maybe not having the board set up there with you so that you're set up for success. Because again, the only reason I was getting those interruptions is because I'm sitting right next to the board right now. So another way that you can be working on this is with rapid modeling. So this is Kelly with a different learner, Nushka, and this was from our food modeling challenge that we had in February. So lots of folks, whoever was interested, were able to post videos of pairing, a button with food in this case, but it can be play, anything that motivates your learner. It can be pets, press pets and then follow through. The idea is rapid modeling, rapidly pairing the two together. And so in this case, they are using a snack button, and each time snack is pressed, a kibble piece appears. Nushka gets to go chase it and then come back, orient back towards Kelly, back towards the button. Notice how Kelly's also pressing with the treat itself to really drive home that this button equals food. Hearing it, make it sound, the food appears each time. So you can pair with something that's really valuable to them. And that's where food often gets chosen because it's valuable to a lot of us, which fair. So it doesn't have to be food though. Whatever is motivating to them can work. And I personally like to use both methods. I model whenever I'm around the board throughout the day for me because I work from home, but I also like to do rapid modeling to pair and really get the idea driven home that, hey, this button equals this specific thing. And thank you. Irma added a link to the food modeling challenge in the chat. Thank you for that. So choosing first buttons and words that will set you and your learner up for success is a big piece of this. And we want to start with 2 or 3 buttons, more than one, to help them realize that different buttons mean different things. That way you can be taking distinct, different actions once they're pressed or, rapidly pairing with each other. And, say you know that your learner is super food motivated, but you don't want to follow through with every single snack press throughout the day, you can have something like snack come out just to do that initial pairing, and then maybe have eat down on the board or something like that, or not a food button on the board to start if you're concerned with that. But we find that the majority of the learners are going to find a way to talk about food regardless. So giving them an outlet for it tends to work for a lot of them. And so ideally, our starting button should be motivating and meaningful to our individual learners, hence why food is a common choice. But play can be another great option. Pets, brush, some kind of physical connection, attention-seeking buttons sometimes as well. Should be easy and convenient for us to model and say yes to immediately. Again, this is where setting ourselves up for success comes in. And concrete or actionable. The soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use. So the more actionable and easy to understand the individual buttons on the soundboard are to start off, the better they tend to do. And then we can get to our more advanced and complicated concepts once they have that strong foundation built first with the board. So that's again why we want to think about things like play. Then you can pick up a toy, very quickly engage with them in that way. Getting food, obviously, you can do something like puzzle that takes longer for them to work through, is enriching for them. Notice Katie even lay down next to me after she was done with the puzzle, and then is now off napping on her own. Rather than continuing to press and seek out my attention, to seek out food, she got her needs met and she's able to settle now, even though she's incredibly food motivated. Thinking about what do they want to talk about. And outside is on here as a common starting button, but don't feel pressured to start with it. It involves moving away from the board, so that can be a challenge for some, and it's not necessarily associating the board, the buttons, as quickly with an outcome that they want. If you live on the 10th floor, for example, it's not going to be easy and convenient for you to model immediately and to follow through on and say yes to, and it's going to take potentially longer for them to make that association. But they know that their harness equals outside. You press outside, pick up the harness, they're still going to be able to make those connections. But think about these things. There's a lot of cats being represented today. I know outside was very motivating for my one-eyed guy, Bernie, but it's at least an hour-long commitment every time he presses the outside button. And getting him geared up and all, but that's just not something that was easy for me to say yes to. So we didn't begin with that button. It's incredibly motivating. He loves to use it now, but we started with eat, pets, and play, so it would be simpler, faster, and more reliably easy for me to say yes to those buttons. Hopefully that's helpful for thinking through these kind of options. Let me know, if you're debating between buttons for your household, if we can be helpful with narrowing this down a bit for you all. And then we often get the concern, well, what happens if they're pressing all the time then? Or I don't want to start with food because then they're just going to press food. And again, that's definitely if they were going to just press food all the time, Katie would absolutely be doing that right now. It is still her favorite buttons, though, to be clear. But once it's no longer a limited resource, it tends to become less valuable of a resource as well. Think about if you knew that every single slot machine that you sat down at was going to give you a jackpot each time, you'd win several jackpots in a row and be like, wow, I've got tens of thousands of dollars. I'm maybe going to go eat. I'm going to go to the bathroom. If you know that you can come back and win a jackpot again every single time, or at least almost every time you're going to hear a yes within reason, we don't want them gaining too much weight. But again, once they realize that jackpot's going to be there for them, it loses a lot of its value, and they don't tend to just sit there obsessively the way you might expect. And if you do have a learner who's like, okay, I'm just going to press this a ton to the point where you can't say yes to all their presses, that's a really great problem to have. That means you might be ready to start introducing some abstract concepts, a way to, have some boundaries, put the brakes on a little bit. So that's where things like more and all done, yes and no, now and later, they can be really helpful for talking to your learners. And even if you aren't ready to put them on the board yet, at least working on these concepts verbally, narrating them, and thinking about what might be a good early pairing for your household. So I started with outside and ball for my border collie. Ball specifically, as opposed to a general play in her case, because ball is life. I did the general play with my kittens since they were happy to play with whatever toy, whatever style, but ball, that was the motivator for my border collie. So think about things like that when you're narrating for your learners. Does it make sense to be general or specific? If you start specific, you can always get general, and vice versa. I do like starting with a more general outside typically, because then you can model potty, narrate potty while they're going to the bathroom, play, walk, whatever it is that you're doing. But if it's incredibly motivating for them to tell you that they need to go outside to potty, by all means, start with what's going to work for you all. I usually talk about that on the previous slide, so apologies. I wanted to dive into that before we got too deep into abstract concepts here. But with Adora, super motivated by that ball and outside. So I added more and all done pretty quickly thereafter for her as a way to kind of put the brakes on a bit. But I realized that all done as I had taught it meant the end of fun. And that wound up being more frustrating for her. And so I quickly realized I needed to add now and later instead for her. And she's a very enthusiastic border collie for context. And so later means yes, just not right now. And that was a more acceptable answer for her. So this is where paying attention to the language that you're using, the reactions, the body language that your learners are, showing you when you're narrating, when you're talking to them, and also recognizing that change is inevitable with the buttons. You can always re-record, you can always change the layout. We just want to do so slowly and model any changes that we make for them as well. And with our abstract concepts, thinking about them in opposing or contrasting pairs that you can model in opposition to one another. Hence, more and all done, now and later, or now, soon and later, yes and no. Even thinking about emotions in this way, since emotions are abstract concepts. So a positive emotion button like happy at the same time as a negative one like mad or sad or frustrated, depending again on how you talk to your learners or how your household as a whole talks to your learner, keeping it as consistent as possible there. Yeah, household member names also are considered typically abstract, but for those of us who do have multi-learner households or multiple humans in the household, having a way for your learner to be specific or to use their own name can be really motivating for them. I've been blown away by how much Bernie loves to press the Bernie button to get my attention and to get me up and over to the board. So funny. Whereas Katie prefers to use the mom button to get my attention. Bernie's like, hey, that's me. I hear my name. I'm excited. I want to tell you what Bernie wants to do. So that's where, yeah, just being ready to adjust, but be willing to try too. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just try putting it down and thinking about names as something that you can model in opposition to one another as well. So, you versus another human in the household, them, their name in contrast to another. And Jennifer, one of our guides who also does mentorship calls that we'll talk about more in your continuing education resources that we have available for free for you right now. She does a tea party where she specifically is working on, her name, eat, different dog name, eat, different dog name, eat, and really labeling and practicing that difference. Anastasia asked that. I'm trying to decide between adding outside or pets next. Misha loves going outside and I live in LA, so it's available year round. Nice. Pet seems easier to model throughout the day, however. Yeah, pets probably would be a bit easier on you, it sounds like. So if you haven't yet gotten independent presses, thinking about, typically what you can model more frequently and is easier to say yes to. But if you've been modeling for a few weeks already and your learner is just not recognizing or not as interested in pressing the buttons themselves, they're like, oh, okay, great. I hear that. I know what it means, but they don't seem motivated to figure out how to press themselves. Then sometimes thinking about something like outside that might be harder to communicate via body language potentially, depends on the learner, of course, as opposed to pets where they can just, slink beside us or nudge us or however it is that they initiate. So outside might be more motivating, even though it's harder for you to say yes to potentially, even though luckily you have the weather on your side. Yeah, so totally up to you. You, again, know your learner and household best. Again, I might be slightly inclined towards the pets, but if you're not seeing the progress that you want in a week or two, I would go ahead and think about adding another. Yeah, and that's a good note for any of you all that maybe have been at it for a little bit already. We do have target training that we'll talk about here in just a moment. They can help them connect the dots, realize that they can activate the buttons, work on their eye-paw or eye-nose coordination, depending on how they prefer to press. But really, it just comes down to getting them to recognize that the buttons have the ability to control outcomes that maybe their body language alone would be a challenge. And again, this is why we're still always honoring and listening to their body language. If they're whining by the back door to go outside, great. I'm going to say outside verbally and I'm going to get them out because they probably got to go. And that's not an opportunity for training, right? That's an opportunity to fulfill a need. And they already gave me a full sentence, full stop. They whined by the back door to let me know that they wanted to go out. So that's not, to me, a training opportunity at the buttons. At the very most, if it's not an urgent request via their body language, I might go over and model and press a button for them, but I'm not asking them to press in that moment. It's an opportunity to connect in a really specific way. And for my senior guy, Ash, we had the buttons down for over a year. He was happy to respond when someone else would press. But it wasn't until he realized that there was a puzzle button on the board and he could press puzzle, and I would run to the freezer and get him a frozen Kong, and he didn't have a way to ask for one of those. And in case anybody hasn't seen, we often get questions about what the different puzzle options are. But so just a little a little frozen Kong for him. When he realized that he could communicate that he wanted something that specific, that he didn't have body language to ask for, that's what unlocked his desire to press. And he's been an intermittent presser ever since. He's not a frequent user, and that's totally fine because he's got body language and vocalizations and other ways to communicate. So it's never a requirement. It's just an option or an opportunity to connect in a specific way. So we want to motivate them with unique, fun buttons that give them outcomes that they desire and potentially are challenged to communicate otherwise. But again, the target training can be helpful for some of them to realize, oh, I can do that. I can activate that myself. It's not just the human goes over and presses it. So we've got a few different options for you that Irma helpfully put in the chat. Thank you so much. The first one is a target training video with Alexis and Bunny. And I really like a shortcut from this one. For those of you who have learners that already know how to do a high five, to do a nose touch, a shake, paw, any kind of behavior like that, you can totally just pop the button out of the hex tile, put it in the palm of your hand, and cue them to do that nose touch, to do that high five, that shake, whatever it is, and then follow through with whatever it is that the button says. So in this case, it would be, kibble, as Bernie is eating kibble. I would normally be pressing this one, but since he is, hi, yeah, Bernie eats. But since he's doing something different, I don't want to mess him up. So that's a great option from the first video. The other two, the cat school button press that's in the chat and the button targeting tutorial, are great for cats and smaller learners, because for them in particular, getting the weight shift to press can be a challenge. They tend to want to bat at things. That's their more natural inclination. So getting that weight shift press is a challenge. Bernie has gotten around that by flopping on the buttons. He's a shoulder presser, incredibly accurate with his shoulder. We've worked on paw presses. I don't mind him shoulder pressing though. He's not frustrated. I can understand him. So we don't do a ton of paw targeting anymore as a result. So there's some cats that headbutt the buttons, some that sit on them, dogs that sit on them as well. And he is actively trying to break into the container. Do you want some more? Yes, you do want more kibble. So speaking of, good boy. Yes, more kibble. You want more kibble? Yes. Come here, bud. So a lot of it is just observing his behavior. He was like, hey, my puzzle's empty. I'm going to go paw at the container of food. Hi, do you want a scoop? You want a scoop? Here you go, bud. Yeah, scoop for kibble. And then just narrating whatever it is that we're doing, including something like scoop as he's being picked up. So now he's up there happily eating his food. So yeah, observing what it is that they're trying to communicate, translating that via buttons, narrating as best you can, and going from there. All right, I don't know where there it is. Put that other button. So Bernie kibble, yay. So if you have a cat who is struggling to press, try to capture, or even a dog, anybody who's trying to activate the button just isn't pressing hard enough via nose, paw, whichever it is. If you can time it and push the button down at the same time that they are attempting to activate it, not their paw, not their head, neck, nose, shoulders, anything like that. There's no muscle memory involved if we're pushing it for them. So, but if you can time it, they're attempting to activate it and you push the button in that moment, they're going to feel it move under their paw or nose. They're going to see it light up potentially. If it's a connect button, they're going to feel the vibration of the speaker. If it's a speak up button, and just get that really tactile feedback that, oh, It's it actually activating that equals the outcome that they want, that, we then are able to follow through. And when in doubt, help them out. You see them trying, just go ahead and press. You see them staring it down, go ahead and press. I don't want them frustrated. This is an option, right? They don't have to communicate this way. If we make it too frustrating for them, they're not going to want to communicate this way. And some might opt out for other reasons, to be clear. They don't have to do this. And if they're not interested, it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It just means sometimes that we need to find other options to motivate them and help them realize that the board has value. And part of how I do that as well is being more inclined to say yes if it is a button press compared to, my border collie barking at me for attention, for example, or throwing her ball repeatedly at my feet, whatever it may be. All right. So let me share some additional resources with you all, and then we'll dive into additional questions that you all have. So our best free resource is going to be the community that we're on right now, community.fluent.pet. Let me share this tab instead. Here we go. Sorry, y'all. So within the FluentPet community, under the welcome area, we've got start button teaching, tons of in-depth info if you're the type of person who wants to do a deep read, deep dive. Got FAQs as well, 41 of them, if you are someone who wants to read through all of that. If you're not, no worries at all. It's just there as an option. There's 4.5 years worth of people's experiences on this community here. And we've got community events, announcements that are great to keep up with. Under the Bootcamp section, this is just for folks like you who have been through Bootcamp. Under the first one with the Bootcamps, this is where you can find upcoming Bootcamps if that would be helpful for you to attend another one or to send to a household member, friend who you think would benefit. You can also switch to past and find recordings if you'd like to see a previous one. This will be up there as well once we finish up today. All right, and I've teased mentorship calls a little bit, but these, I'm so excited that they're back. They are right now free ongoing calls for you to dive into a specific topic with one of our guides who've had lots of success with their learners. So we've got our next one coming up in a few days. We've got lots more coming this month. I'm teaching some of them as well. Really fun topics. So highly recommend checking those out, taking advantage of them. RSVP. You don't have to participate. You can listen in if that's more comfortable for you. But yeah, you get whatever you want to get out of it. We're here to help. So under resources, this is where you can find links to a lot of what we've already shared and a lot of what Irma's already shared. We've got a self-study learning center here. We've got those paw targeting tutorials. We've also got a soundboard planning tool. If you're the type that wants to plan ahead and have an idea of where your soundboard is going, take advantage of that. Canva lets you make it all pretty and stylized. Got lots of great examples through here from guides and other bootcamp instructors. Your discussion, this is a great place if you want to talk through a more in-depth question. Chat, share your updates, your wins, struggles, anything like that. And then tons of great info again in discussion. The one thing I want to highlight is show off your soundboard. So if you are looking for inspiration to get an idea of what kind of layout might work for your household, here's that soundboard planning tool in action. And you can see not only a wall mount option here, but Tara actually did an angled mount to make it more ergonomically friendly for her learner, which is so cool to see. There's as many options here as there are households. You can do kind of the island style with space for walkways. That's how ours is set up. Different wall mount options. You can always do half wall mount, half floor. Totally up to you. When I ran out of floor space in my previous home, that's how we had ours for a little while. When you're thinking about where to put the soundboard, again, you can totally carry it with you while you're deciding, but the more centrally located, easy for you to model, and easy for your learner to get to and press, the better on average. A lot of them like to watch us while they're pressing as well. So that's why there can be ones a bit more centrally located, but even if your goal is to have it kind of tucked into a corner, give you a bit more space the way Sasha's board is set up here, or just that's the only place to put it, Notice how there's still enough room for Sasha's learners to get behind the board and press so that they're not facing a wall. They can be watching, us for our movements, our reactions. And if you've got a board napper and you're seeing already that they want to hang out near the board, Ducat's board here, she's a senior kitty with cancer, so comfort is key. Very advanced learner, as you can see. They've been at it for a little while here, but she's got her nice walkway through the middle and then nap zone so she can basically wake up, stretch, and request whatever it is that she wants. So build out your board based on your learner's use, what's interesting to them. There's no one right way to do it, but we're happy to help you figure out, the nuance of what will be the best choice for you all. All right. So in addition to all of the free resources that I just shared, we have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. This is a 4-week cohort-based class that's taught by Alexis with Bunny and Diane of NeuroDog Training. The next one starts, I believe, April 18th, and there is 25% off if interested. So that has been put in the chat for you all. Thank you, Irma. Please take advantage of that if interested. We are also working on a cat-specific course that we're hoping will debut in May, if interested as well. If anyone is realizing that you need more buttons or hex tiles or anything like that, we've got a 15% off coupon code that's good for everything at Fluent.pet, including the Connect buttons, which rarely go on sale otherwise. We can get that in the chat. And then if you have any feedback for us, we're always looking to improve. We've got a feedback link that we'll go ahead and add to the chat as well for you. And I can see, since I can see Irma typing, it's not letting me, it's giving me trouble when I try to add links to the chat right now, unfortunately. Let us know if anyone else is having trouble with any of the links. We'll make sure to get you access. Thank you for letting us know. Yeah, it's acting up for Irma too. It's so funny. Let me try one more time to get the, oh, there's the discount link. Appreciate y'all's patience. Technology. There we go. And we both were able to add the feedback link. Awesome. All right. And additional questions, y'all. Feel free to raise your hand if you prefer to talk through. You're welcome to type it here in the Q&A portion. We'll see it either way. I see a little bit of typing at least. And if you don't have any questions yet, no worries. You know where to ask within the forum space, and you can always attend mentorship calls as well, whichever ones work for your schedule. If you're anything like me, you're going to think of a question at like midnight tonight and be like, ah. So that's where the forum is at least open all the time. Oh, excellent question, Kate. Do you know if the 4-week course is eligible for CCPDT CEUs, so for dog training CEUs? Diane is a KPA certified instructor. We're in the process of publishing a pet professionals course that may interest you as well. That will at least be eligible for CEUs. I believe she's talking about submitting the Let's Get Them Pressing course as well. I will text her and follow up as soon as we're done today. Excellent question. And we can, let's connect about the pet professionals course as well. Because if you're a certified instructor, that has the ability to add some additional letters behind your name once completing that. It hasn't been published quite yet, but we're hoping to have it up very, very soon. And Diane has put so much in-depth research and information into everything that we know about the buttons, research-wise thus far. Okay. And additional questions. My biggest issue is my learner hasn't fully figured out how to press. So the paw targeting videos should help. Yeah, and that's why we add a few different methods. Hopefully it's not overwhelming having 3 video options, but they're slightly different styles depending on your learner and what they need. She also bites and scratches the hexes a lot. So I'm so glad that you said that. Normally I try to bring this up sooner, but remember, behavior is information. So if you're seeing a lot of biting or scratching, it might be worth adding a button, for example, for chew. Particularly if you see them picking up the hex tiles or the buttons, trying to carry them off, chew them, that sort of thing. It doesn't sound like that's exactly what you're seeing, but regardless, if they're inclined to chew, go ahead and just give them a chew button. You can press that and then follow through with giving them a bully stick, a yak cheese chew, an antler, whatever is safe, nylabone for their age, what their vet has approved. Same with my cats who are into scratching. Bernie, especially early on, loved to dig his claws into the foam. So I added a scratch button for him. And I also have a scratching post right next to the board so that I could direct him to that as needed as well. But yeah, it sounds like you're right on the cusp, especially again, if you can time it and help them out, your learner out when you see them trying to press. Yeah, she's a little cat. Yeah, so especially if you see her attempting to bat or scratch, go ahead. When in doubt, help her out. You go ahead and press to show her, oh, right, this is the behavior that's going to get you what you want. For my blind cat, she would clear the counters when it was time to refill her food. If she ran out of food and I hadn't realized it, she'd just go and slowly bat everything off the counter to clear it. And so I knew that she was getting ready to do that. And I had a button recorded that said hungry at the time, since re-recorded to have been kibble or eat. So again, the change is inevitable. It's okay to have to re-record a button. So at the time it said hungry. And as she went to knock that bowl off the counter, I took that button, put it underneath her paw. So she smacked that button, said hungry, and that food got filled with kibble immediately. And she was like, what? That's so much easier than clearing the counters. And it took 2 times of capturing in the moment when she was really motivated for her to make the connection, be like, all right, where's that button? So I, in a weird way, had an advantage with her being blind and that she didn't see it coming. But if you can really be thinking about, what it is that she's trying to communicate while she's, chewing, scratching, digging, whatever it is, and add the button for that specifically in that moment, either modeling it yourself or helping in the target training in that moment when you know she's interested, that tends to be best for connecting the dots in my experience. The 2 buttons I use so far are 2 of her favorite toys. One is for playing, the other is for comfort. Great, yeah. Yeah, I love your thought process there. Yeah, so it might be worth adding another 1 or 2 if you're already modeling diligently, if you know that she's interested. No rush or pressure to add any, but you can always do that as well to see if it really, motivates a little bit more for her to try to figure it out and to help her realize again that different buttons mean different things, and more opportunities for you to model throughout the day as well. Yeah, but totally up to you. Kate said, I may be getting ahead of myself, but would love more detail on modeling identifiers like mom, dad, other dogs' names, and things they experience like ouch or itchy. But I know we have limited time. Yeah, we've got a little more time. No worries. Yeah, so modeling identifiers like mom or dad, a lot of it comes down to narrating and talking in third person and deciding how you want to label yourself. I know Calvin on the call started off with dad, but realized when they added a mad button to the board that dad and mad were homonyms and were potentially more confusing, and so switched to identifying as Calvin instead, his first name. I committed 4.5 years ago, well, longer than that, to identifying myself as mom. I started it off as kind of tongue in cheek, but I will say it adds an extra unique aspect to narrating and modeling what I'm doing. I feel like I do sound slightly more insane than I would otherwise when I'm out and about in the neighborhood being like, mom this, mom that, with my animals, narrating everything that I'm doing for them. So sometimes first person, would be, or referring to yourself in third person would be better, your first name. And think about what they're used to already hearing you called. Christina Hunger went with Christina initially because that's what her partner called her. And so that's what Stella knew her as, was Christina. I live alone, so I got to pick because I got to just narrate in third person what I wanted myself to be called. Yeah, so it's up to you. If you have kids and they're already used to hearing, your animals are already used to hearing you called mom or dad, that might be the easy shortcut. Totally up to you. And it can be personal preference as well. Calvin said I'm still known as the mad dad. Yes, yeah, love Billy Speaks. Love Kendra. Yeah, they're fantastic. Great examples of all of this. And so the other piece of this question that has come up a couple times here, how do you teach things like itchy or ouch and body parts like ear or belly? My dog gets a lot of ear infections, so I'd love for him to talk about that. Absolutely. So things like ouch or itch, we get a bit less opportunity to model and narrate, at least hopefully. So those can take longer. And those are concepts that I'm always working on verbally narrating to my learners, even if I don't yet have a button down for it. So I don't have specific body parts down on the board currently. I did for my previous cat, but after she passed, starting over with the kittens. So we're working on sensory things right now, like smell, hear, see, but eventually we will get to then like, oh, you hear with your ear, although that's a homonym that I'm probably gonna have to think about, you see with your eye. So I will get more specific down the line with the buttons. But right now, just in our day-to-day life, if I'm petting their ear, I'm labeling it as ear. If I see them scratching their ear, Bernie ear itch, labeling, narrating everything that I'm observing and being as consistent as I can be with those observations. And, as well as, if I'm scratching, mom scratch or mom itch, whatever you want to define it as, narrate it as. It does take time to develop your button speak a little bit, but you'll get there. Ouch, similar. Unfortunately, I have chronic pain, so I can narrate my own pain more than the average person, probably. When my learners came home from being spayed and neutered, I did a lot of modeling ouch then. My border collie has muscle strain issues. So anytime I notice her gait is off, adore ouch. If I hear them yelp while they're scratching their ear, particularly if I know that there's an ear infection or irritation going on, then I will label the ouch in that moment. And I also like to start pairing that with help. Mom, help. Ideally, with giving them relief. If they're the type that doesn't want you to touch their ear, obviously not labeling it as help in that moment. We don't want them to have a negative association with the ouch, or excuse me, with the help. Ouch, it would make sense if they have a negative association with. But yeah, anytime I'll even, see them trying to scratch inside their ear, mom help, and then I'll scratch it for them so they're not, irritating it more with their sharper nails. If they can't get to a spot on their body that I can tell is itchy, mom help itch. So I'm also labeling help as a relief so that can get them to seek out assistance for their ouches, irritations, that sort of thing in the future as well. And this, we're getting a little bit in the weeds and in depth here. But the other part of this is recognizing that you probably need to be working on emotions. I was so incredibly skeptical of emotion buttons when I started this, coming from an animal behavior background. I was like, why would I want things like, I can't quantify happy or mad or frustrated. Like that's just, and I can see in their body language. So why do we need buttons for that? Well, turns out that my learners and many others now that we've observed over the years will use ouch for frustration if they don't have a way to already articulate that they're unhappy. So thinking about emotions, labeling other emotions, and working on getting emotions on the board. In my experience, I think in retrospect now, I want to make sure to have emotions on the board before I put an ouch button on the board, because then, like I said, ouch tends to be used for frustration for a lot of them. And when you think about the irritation from pain and the irritation from frustration, it makes sense that they might be conflating that in some way. So having the buttons separate for emotions can help make sure that they are more distinct going forward. Hopefully that didn't make it way more complicated, but just talk to, label, narrate, as much as you can. Thank you, Irma. All right. So he says, I now say, show me, when I'm not exactly sure what any of my dogs want. What would be the best way to turn this into a cue to go to the buttons? Or does this naturally happen with time? Excellent question. Yeah. I love the show me. Show me or tell me more, or just sometimes a more is what I'll add to let my guys know that they need to give me more information. Yeah, so I love a show me button. Yeah. And that is you still either a physical button or verbalization, I should say. Because yeah, you're still reading their body language and you're asking for more information. And sometimes that answer, when you ask them to show you, sometimes that answer is going to be them going to what it is that they want and answering with more body language. Sometimes it is going to be an answer via buttons. And I love that they have that option and kind of opportunity to use multiple modes of connecting with us and communicating with us. Yeah, so I would just kind of keep doing show me. And if you don't immediately get an answer via body language from them, or more information via body language, go ahead and walk to the board together. And if they don't start using the buttons, that's okay. That's where you can either do your best approximation and push what you think they want and then follow through. And if you're wrong, they are usually pretty good about either going back to the board or showing us via body language that they wanted something else instead. So yeah, just keeping that open line of communication. And I would still give them the opportunity to answer first via body language, but then, just walk over to the board, ask them to show you again. If you don't get a response from them pretty quickly, or at least them clearly thinking about the board, just don't keep asking more. Don't keep expecting them to repeat themselves. That's when I would go and press and give my best guess, or, press, you want outside or play, or, you can press a couple and let them decide between the two, or based on their body language, they'll tell you which it is. Excellent question. Oh, Calvin added, I love this. I'm thinking of button. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because once they realize that they can elaborate via the board and body language even more, and that we're listening, that it is a two-way communication street, which it always is, of course, and you're already doing with your learner, but this just takes it to a level of specificity that they're not able to otherwise. Once they realize that, then it gets to the point where having something like a button, or even a button for word or a button for button, to then let them communicate, hey, I don't actually have a button for what it is that I'm interested in. And that's where that show me concept that you already want to work on, that's when that can really come in handy for them to then show you via body language, like, oh, this is what I need a button for now. I'm not articulating this well, but it's so cool to see them get to the point where they are able to ask for more words and more things that they want to communicate once they get it. This all scaffolds and builds beautifully off of itself, but we need to lay this really strong foundation first. So stay consistent, keep it easy, actionable, concrete to start off with, and then we can get much more complicated. Yeah, and just Keep at it. Lots and lots of repetition. Yes, with multiple learners, is it best to model with them separately for focus or all together so they're exposed to more frequent modeling? Excellent question. I find I'm able to model for everyone pretty effectively. I do wonder if, you know, my guys are probably already have a lot of practice waiting their turn, focusing in between. There's less chaos than pushing each other out of the way. So it kind of depends on the household. They're not waiting robotically for their turn by any means, but they're not interrupting each other at least. So barring them, turning it into too much chaos, as long as you feel like at least somebody is connecting. I love modeling for everyone. I think it can be fun to work individually as well. Like if my dogs are out playing in the yard, I might do just a training session with one cat or both cats. So I do love working separately, but unless you need that, unless it's too much chaos or too much resource guarding going on, yeah, all together for more frequent modeling can be fun, and a little bit of healthy competition, healthy motivation to press before the other. One other thing that I will add about multi-learner households, I do have a shared board for all 4 of the learners, but I've got built-in redundancies for the most popular buttons like mom, food, play, that sort of thing. So if one is pressing, someone else can come chime in. And because sometimes, particularly with the kittens, or now cats, if one is pressing, the other is like, oh, heck yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And they want to come in and echo each other, or one will press yes while somebody's pressing food or outside or whatever it is that they want. So that can be really fun to combine as well. And yay, my cat just went crazy reusing her buttons. That is fantastic. I love to hear it. Love to hear it. And one other quick aside about multi-species households. I did find that, at least for me with visually impaired cats, it was helpful to start with an elevated board that I could practice, working with the cats more individually at. They're up where they feel safe. They're at my level. They're not worried about getting underfoot or knocked out of the way by the dogs. And so starting elevated can speed things up for some cats or just help with their comfort. And then it doesn't mean that they have to keep it elevated. It used to be up here, but we quickly ran out of space. And so now it's been getting integrated into kind of our whole main soundboard that's throughout this area here. Hi, Ash. My little senior guy, Ash, has been asking for snuggles behind me via body language. And he's been still getting attention because there doesn't have to be a button press. I could, if I really want to, press pets for him. Pets, yeah. But he's been around the buttons for 4.5 years at this point. Hot blood. And again, body language, always acceptable. All right, y'all. Yes, Galvin has heard me say so many times now that I can talk about buttons all day. Well, a lot of us can here at FluentPet, if not all of us. All right, y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of your great questions, your focus today, your interest in something new, and being on the forefront of this exploration of the buttons and what they're capable of here. So please don't be strangers. Again, you've got us for whatever assistance you need. I hope to see you at future mentorship calls or a future boot camp if that would be helpful. Thanks so much again for being here. I would say good luck, but you don't need luck. You know your learner and your household best. You've got this. Just be patient and consistent and pick stuff that motivates them, and you'll get there sooner rather than later. But the speed at which they pick up buttons has no bearing on their long-term success, so no rush either. Thanks so much again, y'all. Yes, I thought I saw Posler in the, that's awesome. I know, I was like, I keep talking about puzzles, but I feel like I should be more specific. Love, love, love Posler. So appreciate y'all. Yes, and my cats also enjoy Posler. Yay. Yeah, thanks so much again, everyone. Like I said, I hope to see everyone around too. And thank you, Irma and Calvin, as always, for all of your assistance too. Yeah, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye, y'all.